The night was colder than anything the alien mother had ever known. The wind cut like sharp knives across her skin. The ground was covered with hard snow, frozen and cruel. She held her child tightly against her chest. The child was shaking, his small body weak and fragile. Every breath from him sounded like the last one. The alien mother had nothing left. Her clothes were torn and thin, almost useless against the storm. She had already given her child every piece of fabric she could spare. But still the boy's lips turned blue. Still, his eyes closed for too long. Still, his little hands felt colder than ice. Her heart beat fast with fear. She knew that if she did nothing, the night would take her child away. Her people were gone, her village burned, and she was alone in this world. But a mother never gives up, not while her child is still alive. She looked at her clothes, the last thing she had left. The fabric was old, but it could burn. Her hands shook as she tore them from her body piece by piece. She made a small pile on the frozen ground. She struck stones together until a tiny spark came. The fire caught, small but alive. Orange light spread against the darkness. The flames licked the air, fighting back the cold. The mother pulled her child closer to the fire. She whispered soft words into his ear. "Stay awake, little one, stay. With me," she said. Her voice broke, but she forced a smile. The child opened his eyes just enough to see the fire. For a moment, he stopped shaking. For a moment, hope lived again. But the fire was small. The flames ate her clothes quickly. One sleeve gone, then another. Her cloak turned to ash. She shivered, now bare against the icy wind. Her skin burned from the cold, but she did not move away. She let the fire take everything, because her child was worth more than her pain. The night stretched on. The stars above were hidden behind thick clouds. The forest around them was silent. No birds, no animals, only the sound of the wind. The mother's teeth chattered, her body weak, but her arms stayed strong around the child. Her love was the only shield he had left. The fire grew smaller. The flames turned into red coals. Soon even the smoke began to fade. The child stirred, his eyes half closed. "Mother, I'm cold," he whispered. The words cut into her heart like a knife. She wanted to tell him it would be fine. She wanted to promise him the sun would rise, but her lips froze on the words, because she did not know if morning would come. Her breath came slower now. Her body was naked, her skin raw from the wind. Still, she bent low and covered her child with her arms. She pressed her cheek against his head. Her tears froze before they could fall. "Sleep, my little one," she whispered, "but do not leave me." Her voice cracked, her chest heavy with sorrow. The fire died at last, leaving only cold ashes. The night swallowed them again. The shadows grew darker, the air sharper. The mother closed her eyes for a moment. She prayed for a miracle, but no miracle came. Every sound in the forest made her tense, the crack of a branch, the whistle of wind. She imagined beasts hiding in the dark. She imagined death creeping closer, but she had no strength to fight. Her only battle was keeping her child alive. The boy's breathing grew weaker. His chest rose and fell slowly. The mother shook him gently. "Stay with me," she begged. "Stay alive just a little longer." The night felt endless. Time slowed. Every second was heavy. Every minute was a struggle. The stars above were silent witnesses, and the frozen wind showed no mercy. She thought of her village. She thought of the warm fire she once had. She thought of the songs her people used to sing, all gone now, destroyed by raiders. All she had left was this small boy, her child, her reason to fight, but even the strongest hearts break, even the bravest mothers fear. As the cold reached deeper into her bones, she knew she was losing. Her body trembled, her lips turned pale, but still she would not let go. Not while breath still lived in her chest. The forest around them was empty, but far away, unseen to her eyes. A faint light flickered in the distance. A human traveler walked through the snow. He saw smoke earlier, strange against the night, and now he moved closer, step by step. The mother did not know it, But her silent prayer had been heard, and soon everything would change. The fire was almost gone. The small flames that once danced proudly were now weak and dying. Only a few sparks rose into the dark sky, carried away by the cold wind. The alien mother watched them with tired eyes, her heart sinking lower with every passing second. The warmth that had saved her child was fading, and with it her hope. She reached out her hands to the fire, trying to protect the last red coals. Her fingers were stiff, her skin raw from the cold. The fire hissed as if mocking her, as if reminding her that everything ends. She leaned closer, blowing softly, trying to bring life back into the dying flame. But the wind was stronger. The wind wanted to take everything away. Her child lay close to her, wrapped in her thin arms. His breathing was shallow, his lips pale. The mother stroked his cheek with trembling fingers. She whispered softly, her voice breaking. "Stay awake, my son, don't let the night take you." The boy opened his eyes for a moment, his voice small. "Mother, I'm tired," he said. The words filled her chest with terror. She shook her head quickly, forcing a smile. "No, don't sleep. Look at me. Listen to my voice." But his eyes closed again, heavy with exhaustion. Her mind raced, desperate. There was no wood, no clothes, no food, nothing left to burn. She looked around the forest, but all the trees were covered with ice, all the branches were too wet, too heavy with snow. Her breath came fast, each one painful in the freezing air. She thought about running, about searching, but her legs were too weak and she could not. Leave her child alone. The fire cracked one last time. A small spark jumped, glowing bright for a heartbeat, then it died. Darkness swallowed them again. The mother's body shook violently, the cold biting deep into her bones. Her skin turned numb, her lips blue. She pressed her child closer, giving him every drop of warmth left in her body. Her mind drifted back to memories. She remembered her, people singing around great fires. She remembered her son laughing, running between the huts. Those days were gone. Her village burned, her people hunted. She had carried her son through forests, across rivers, through endless nights. And now here they were in the middle of nowhere, at the mercy of the cruel cold. She began to hum softly. It was an old lullaby, a song from her people. Her voice was weak, shaking with every note, but she sang anyway, not for herself, but for her son. She wanted him to feel safe, even as the world tried to tear them apart. The child stirred, his eyes opening just a little. He listened, and for a brief moment, a small smile touched his lips. The mother felt her heart swell. Even in this darkness, even in this suffering, his smile was like light. It gave her strength, but strength was not enough to fight the cold. The wind howled louder. Snow began to fall again, thick and heavy. The mother tilted her head back, watching the white flakes cover the fire's ashes. Every snowflake felt like another nail in their coffin. Her tears froze before they could fall. Her heart screamed inside her chest. Why was there no help? Why was the universe so cruel? Her arms grew numb, but she refused to let go of her son. If death was coming, she would meet it holding him. She closed her eyes, whispering to herself, "Just one more chance. One more miracle." Her words disappeared into the night. The forest gave no answer. The stars remained hidden. The cold pressed harder, and hope thinned like smoke. But then, something stirred in the distance. A faint sound carried through the trees. The mother's ears twitched. Her eyes opening wide. Was it her imagination? Was it only the wind? She held her breath, waiting, listening. There it was again. A crunch, the sound of footsteps in the snow. Her heart raced, torn between fear and hope. Who could it be? A beast, hungry for flesh? Raiders, searching for survivors? Or someone else? Her grip tightened around her son. She pulled him closer, her body tense, ready to protect him, even if it meant her last breath. The sound grew louder, closer, steady. Whoever it was, they were moving with purpose. The mother's eyes darted. Through the dark forest, searching at last through the falling snow, she saw a shadow. A tall figure moving carefully between the trees. The shape was strange. Not alien, not beast. It looked human. Her chest tightened, her mind racing. She had heard stories of humans. Some said they were kind, others said they were dangerous. Which was true? She did not know, and she could not risk trusting the wrong one. The figure drew closer. The sound of boots crunching on snow grew clear. The mother pressed her back against a tree, hiding her child behind her. Her body shivered violently, but her eyes burned with fierce fire. If this stranger meant harm, he would have to go through her first. Her son whimpered softly, and she hushed him with a trembling hand. The sparks of the fire were gone now, but new sparks lit inside her heart. Sparks of fear, of hope, of something unknown. The figure stopped only a few steps away. The snowstorm cleared just enough for the mother to see his face. A human, wrapped in heavy clothes, his breath steaming in the cold. He looked down at her with wide eyes, shocked at what he saw. The alien mother's heart pounded. Was this the end, or the beginning of something greater? The forest was silent except for the crunch of boots pressing into the frozen snow. The human walked slowly, his eyes searching the darkness. He had been traveling alone for many days, moving through empty lands. The world was cruel, filled with broken villages and lost lives. But tonight something was different. He had seen smoke earlier, rising like a whisper between the trees. It was strange, out here in the middle of nowhere, and so he followed it step by step, guided by a feeling he could not explain. The wind howled around him, pulling at his coat. His hands were numb inside his gloves, his breath heavy with frost. But his eyes stayed sharp, scanning for danger. Bandits roamed these lands. Beasts prowled in the night. A fire could mean many things, safety or death. Still, something inside told him he could not turn away. He paused, crouching low. There on the snow, faint prints marked the ground, small footprints, weak and uneven, and beside them larger ones but unsteady. He frowned, his mind piecing the picture together. Someone had walked here, carrying a heavy burden, someone weak, someone desperate. His heart tightened. He had seen too many who did not survive the cold. But maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. He followed the tracks deeper into the forest, each step filled with tension, each sound making him grip the knife at his belt. A branch snapped under his boot, echoing loud in the silence. Somewhere ahead, he thought he heard a faint gasp. His pace quickened. Then through the falling snow he saw them, a shape pressed against a tree, shivering violently, her arms wrapped tightly around a small child. The human's breath caught in his throat. It was not what he expected. The figure was alien, skin pale, eyes large, features strange, but there was no mistaking the fear in her face, nor the small child clinging weakly to her. The mother's eyes locked on him, wide and filled with fire. She did not move, though her body trembled. Her bare skin was red from the cold, her body fragile. Yet she stood in front of her child like a shield, ready to fight, ready to die if she must. The human raised his hand slowly. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said, his voice calm. The mother flinched at the sound, pulling her child closer. Her lips moved, whispering words in a language he did not know. But her eyes spoke clearly. They said, "Don't come closer." He took one careful step forward, then stopped. The snow crunched beneath his boots, loud in the silence. The child whimpered softly, a thin sound that pierced the human's chest. He could see how weak the boy was, his small body limp, the human's heart clenched. He had seen suffering before, but this was different. This was a mother fighting against the impossible. He reached into his coat slowly, not for his knife, but for something else. He pulled out a thick blanket, worn but warm. He lowered himself to the ground and placed it in the snow between them. Then he stepped back, raising his hands again. The mother stared at the blanket, her eyes darting between it and the man. Her body shook, harder, torn between fear and need. The human spoke again, softly. "For the child," he said, pointing gently. His words meant nothing to her, but his tone carried weight. The mother's lips pressed together, her breath shaky. She looked down at her son, whose eyes fluttered weakly. She knew he would not last much longer. Without warmth, her heart battled her fear. Humans were strangers, outsiders. Some said they could not be trusted, but what choice did she have? Slowly, painfully, she reached out with one trembling hand. Her fingers touched the blanket. The fabric felt thick, safe, warm. She pulled it quickly to her child, wrapping him tight. Her eyes filled with tears. Though she tried to hide them, the human exhaled, relief washing over him. He could see the mother was still afraid, but she had not turned away. That meant something. He took another cautious step forward. His eyes stayed gentle, his hands open. He wanted her to see he meant no harm. The mother held the child close, her body still tense. She whispered into the boy's ear, rocking him softly. The human saw how fragile she was, her skin bruised, her breath shallow, her body too thin. She was barely holding on, and yet she was still standing because of the child. Snow continued to fall, covering their footprints. The wind grew colder, stronger. If they stayed here, both mother and child would not survive. The night. The human knew it, and he had to make a choice. Should he walk away and leave them strangers in the snow? Or should he risk everything, take them with him, and face whatever came next? He looked at the mother again, her eyes still fierce, still ready to fight him if he made the wrong move. But behind that fire, he saw something else. A silent plea. A spark of desperate hope. The human's jaw tightened. He made his decision. He stepped closer, slowly removing his heavy coat. The cold bit into him instantly, but he did not care. He draped it over the mother's shoulders. She gasped, stiffening, ready to push him away. But then the warmth sank in. Her body relaxed just a little. Her eyes widened, confused. This was not an enemy's gesture. This was something else. Something unexpected. The human spoke again, his voice firm but kind. "Come with me," he said, pointing into the forest. The mother did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. Her eyes dropped to her child, his small face pressed against the blanket, breathing faintly. She had no more choices left. She nodded slowly, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Please." The human extended his hand. The alien mother hesitated only a moment before taking. Yet the snowstorm raged around them, but for the first time that night there was a spark of real hope. The storm raged harder, snow falling like endless sheets of white. The forest groaned under the weight of ice, branches snapping in the wind. In the middle of this frozen nightmare stood the alien mother, weak and trembling. Beside her was the human, tall and steady, his eyes full of determination. And between them, silence. A silence heavy with fear and mistrust. The mother clutched her child, holding him so close that her own breathing turned ragged. Her eyes never left the human's face. She did not trust him. She could not trust him. But the warmth of the blanket he had given her son was real, and the coat on her shoulders shielded her body from death. This was no trick, no weapon. This was help. Still, her heart beat wildly, torn between gratitude and suspicion. The human lowered himself to one knee, making himself smaller. He spoke again, his voice slow, calm. The words were strange to her ears, unfamiliar, but his tone carried meaning. He pointed at the child, then at himself, then at the path ahead. His hands moved carefully, showing he wanted to carry the boy. The mother's eyes narrowed, her grip tightening. Her body screamed no, but her mind whispered maybe. The child stirred weakly in her arms, his small chest rising and falling like fragile glass. The mother's lips trembled, her body had no more strength. Her legs ached, her arms were failing. She knew she could not walk far, not in this storm, not barefoot on frozen ground. If she fell, her son would die with her. She looked at the human again. His eyes did not waver. There was no hunger, no cruelty in them, only resolve. She hated herself for hesitating, but finally, with a slow breath, she loosened her grip. The human moved closer, carefully. He reached out, and with strong, steady arms, He lifted the child. The boy was light, too light for his age, his body limp against the man's chest. The human wrapped the blanket tighter around him. The mother followed every movement with her eyes, her body tense. If he made one wrong move, she was ready to fight with the last breath in her lungs. The human adjusted the child on his back, securing him with a strap from his pack. Then he stood tall again. He extended his hand toward the mother, offering to guide her. The mother looked at his hand as though it were a serpent. But the storm howled. The snow burned her bare feet. Her body could not go on alone. Her child's life depended on her choice. Slowly, she placed her trembling hand into his. The human's grip was firm, steady, not crushing, not forceful, just enough to remind her she was not alone anymore. For the first time in countless nights, the mother felt something she had almost forgotten. The faint echo of safety. Together they began to walk. The snow crunched under their steps, the forest stretching endlessly before them. The human moved with purpose, leading her along paths hidden by the storm. He seemed to know the land, where the ground was solid, and where danger lurked. The mother stumbled often, her legs weak, but he never let her fall. Every time she slipped, his hand pulled her back. Steady and sure, her mind raced with questions. Why was he helping her? Why risk his life for strangers? She had been taught that humans cared only for themselves, but this one had given her warmth, carried her child, and now walked beside her. It made no sense. And yet, it was real. The child made a soft sound against the human's back, a small cry, then silence. The mother's heart squeezed, fear rising. She hurried forward, touching the boy's face. He was still breathing, weak but alive. The human slowed his steps, letting her check. He gave a small nod as if to say, "He is safe with me." They pressed on, hour after hour, the storm biting into their skin. The mother's body screamed for rest. Her feet were cut and bleeding, leaving faint trails in the snow, but she refused to stop. Not when her son still breathed. Not when this stranger was giving them a chance. At last, through the swirling storm, a dark shape appeared ahead. The human pointed toward it, his pace quickening. The mother squinted, her eyes widening. It was a cabin, old and broken, but standing strong against the wind. Smoke marks blackened the chimney, but no fire burned now. It was shelter, a place to survive the night. When they reached it, the human pushed the door open with his shoulder. The hinges groaned, the sound echoing through the hollow space. Inside, the air was stale but still warmer than the storm outside. Wood lay scattered in a corner, dry enough to burn. The human set the child down gently, covering him with blankets. Then he moved, quickly, building a fire with practiced hands. Within minutes, flames roared again, filling the cabin with golden light. The mother stood frozen at the doorway, her body shaking. Her eyes darted from the fire to her son. The child's cheeks slowly gained color, his breathing steadier. Relief hit her like a wave, her knees weak. She lowered herself to the ground, tears running down her frozen face. This time they did not freeze. This time they fell freely. The human looked at her, his face unreadable in the firelight. For a long moment neither spoke. Two strangers from different worlds, bound together by the fight to keep a child alive. The mother wrapped her arms around, her son whispering softly. Her eyes lifted to the human again. She did not know his name. She did not know his reasons. But in that moment, she knew one thing. This was not their end. This was the beginning. The fire crackled inside the cabin, its glow painting the walls with soft orange light. The warmth pushed away the bitter cold, but not the shadows of doubt that lived inside the alien mother's heart. Her child slept soundly now, wrapped in the human's blanket, his cheeks no longer pale. Every rise and fall of his chest was a blessing, and yet, the mother's eyes never left the human. He sat across from her, close to the fire, his hands busy, cutting strips of wood to feed the flames. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, always watching, always listening. The mother wrapped her arms tighter around her child. The coat he had given her was warm, far warmer than her torn rags had ever been, but the comfort it brought only deepened her fear. Why would a stranger, a human, give so much? What did he want in return? Her people had told stories of humans. Some were tales of kindness, of trade and peace. Others were darker, of betrayal, of greed, of cruelty. Which story was true? She did not know. All she knew was that trust was dangerous. And yet, without him, she and her son would already be dead. The fire popped loudly, startling her. The human glanced up, meeting her eyes. For a moment, silence stretched between them. She looked away quickly, clutching her child closer. Her heart beat fast. Torn between gratitude and suspicion, the human spoke, his voice low and steady. The words were foreign, strange to her ears, but his tone was not sharp, not threatening. He pointed to himself, then tapped his chest, repeating a single word, his name. She frowned, confused, but the sound echoed in her mind. He was trying to tell her who he was, trying to build a bridge across the wall of fear. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She wanted to give her name, to answer him, but fear sealed her throat. Instead, she only pulled her child closer and whispered softly into his ear. Her son stirred but did not wake. His small hand rested on her arm, his warmth giving her courage. The human did not press her. He simply nodded as if to say, "It is enough for now." Then he returned to his work, feeding the fire, keeping it alive. His patience unsettled her even more. Most men demanded things quickly, roughly. This one waited, giving without asking, and that was what frightened her most of all. Hours passed. The storm outside howled like an angry beast. Snow slammed against the cabin walls. But inside, the fire held steady. The mother's eyelids grew heavy, her body begging for rest. But she forced herself to stay awake. She could not let her guard down. What if he turned on them while she slept? What if this was all a trick, a trap? Her body shivered, not from cold this time, but from the weight of fear. She shifted slightly, reaching for a sharp stone she had hidden in her torn clothing. It was small, not much of a weapon, but it was all she had. Her fingers curled around it tightly. If the human tried anything, she would fight. She would fight until her last breath. The human glanced at her again, his eyes catching the movement. For a moment, their gazes locked. His expression did not change, but instead of anger, there was something else in his eyes. Understanding. He gave a small nod, as if he knew, as if he expected her to fear him. Then, slowly, he set his knife. On the ground, far from his reach, the gesture struck her like thunder. He was showing her that he would not harm them, that he was choosing trust first. Her grip on the stone loosened. Her heart raced, confusion swirling inside her. Why would he do this? Why show weakness to a stranger, unless he truly meant no harm? The child stirred again, coughing softly. The mother bent quickly, brushing his hair back. Her fear melted into worry. His skin was still too cold, his breathing too shallow. The human noticed his brow furrowing. He stood, moving to his pack. He pulled out dried food, hard bread, and a small flask of water. He placed them gently in front of her, then stepped back. Her stomach twisted at the sight of food. She had not eaten in days, but she hesitated, staring at him with wary eyes. Was it safe? Was this another test? The human waited, silent. The firelight flickered across his face, revealing no malice. Her child coughed again, his lips dry. At last she reached out, breaking a piece of bread. She held it to her son's lips. The boy chewed weakly, swallowing. Slowly, color returned to his cheeks, if only slightly. Tears blurred her vision. She whispered, "Thank you," though she knew he could not understand. The human watched quietly. A faint softness touched his face, but he said nothing. He simply nodded once more. The storm outside began to calm, the wind softening, but inside another storm raged. The battle in the mother's heart, trust or fear, gratitude or suspicion. Survival depended on the choice. She stared at the human, her breath unsteady. He had given her warmth, food, and safety. But could she give him trust in return? The fire crackled louder, filling the silence between them. Her child shifted in her arms, his small voice whispering in sleep. Warm. Safe. The words pierced her soul. For the first time in many nights, he dreamed of safety. The mother looked at the human again. Her fear remained sharp and strong, but deep inside a new feeling stirred, the fragile beginning of trust. The storm had calmed when dawn came, but the cold had not left. The world outside the cabin was still white and merciless. The alien mother stood by the doorway, holding her child close. Her eyes searched the forest with fear. She knew this shelter could not protect them forever. If raiders or beasts found the smoke from their fire, it would be their end. The human tightened the straps of his pack. He looked at the mother and then at the child. He spoke softly, his words unknown to her, but his gestures were clear. It was time to move. The mother's heart raced. She was weak, her feet bleeding, her body broken, but she nodded because staying meant death. At least with him, there was a chance. The human lifted the child onto his back again. The boy's small arms dangled weakly over his shoulders, the blanket wrapped tight around him. The mother followed, limping, her hands trembling from exhaustion, but her eyes never left her son. As long as he breathed, she would walk, even if every step cut her feet deeper. They moved through the forest, snow crunching under their boots. The trees stood tall like frozen guardians, their branches heavy with ice. The silence was eerie, broken only by the distant call of crows. The mother shivered, her instincts alert. Crows meant death was near. Perhaps they circled a body, or perhaps they circled her and her child waiting. The human led with steady steps. He knew the paths. Avoiding deep snow and hidden pits, he paused often, checking the ground for tracks. Once he raised his hand sharply. The mother froze. Her breath caught in her chest. He pointed to the snow. Prints, large and heavy. Wolves. Her stomach twisted with fear. The howls came not long after, echoing through the trees. Low, hungry, close. The child whimpered softly, against the man's back. The mother's hands shook, gripping the small stone she still carried. It was useless against wolves, but it was all she had. The human's jaw tightened, his hand resting on the knife at his side. He scanned the trees, listening, calculating. Then he motioned for her to follow quickly. They moved faster now, their steps urgent. The snow crunched louder. Every sound seemed to chase them. The howls grew closer, sharper. The mother's chest burned from running, her legs weak. But the thought of sharp teeth sinking into her son drove her forward. Suddenly, a shape darted between the trees. Yellow eyes gleamed in the shadows. The first wolf, thin and desperate, watching, waiting. The mother gasped, her body trembling. But the human did not stop. He pushed her ahead, his eyes locked on the danger. The wolf snarled but did not attack. Not yet. The forest grew darker as clouds swallowed the pale sun. Snow began to fall again. The human led them toward a narrow ridge. Below, sharp rocks cut through the snow like jagged teeth. It was dangerous but safer than open ground where wolves could circle. The mother stumbled on the narrow path, nearly falling, but the human caught her arm, steadying her for a moment. Their eyes met. No words passed between them, but she felt something, strength flowing from him into her. They pressed on. The howls echoed from behind, closer, louder. The wolves were following. Their hunger made them bold. The mother's heart pounded, her hands clutching her son's blanket. If the beast caught them, she would fight with her, bare hands if she had to. Hours passed like a nightmare. Every step was a battle, every sound a warning. The child drifted in and out of sleep. The mother whispered to him, promising safety she wasn't sure she could give. The human never slowed, his steps strong, his shoulders carrying both weight and responsibility. At last the trees parted, revealing a frozen river. The ice stretched wide, glistening under the pale sky. The human stopped, scanning the horizon. Across the river, the land rose into hills. He pointed forward, his voice firm. The mother understood. That way, but as they stepped onto the ice, the howls erupted again, closer than ever. Shadows darted at the edge of the forest. Yellow eyes gleamed, teeth flashing. The pack had caught up. The mother's body froze with terror. The human turned, knife in hand, his eyes hard. The wolves stepped onto the ice, circling slowly. Their growls rumbled like thunder. The mother clutched her child, whispering prayers to the stars. Her legs shook, her voice cracked. The human stood tall, ready to fight, but the ice groaned under their weight. A crack split across the surface, sharp and loud. The wolves paused, their ears twitching. The mother gasped, fear gripping her chest. One wrong move, and the river would swallow them all. The wind howled. Again carrying snow across the frozen surface, the wolves lowered their bodies, ready to spring. The human shifted his stance, his blade gleaming in the pale light. The mother's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. The child stirred in her arms, whispering softly, "Mother." And then the first wolf leapt, its body flying through the air. The human raised his blade. The battle for survival had begun. The wolf flew through the air, its jaws wide, teeth glinting like knives. The human twisted his body, his blade flashing in the pale light. Steel met flesh, and the beast fell onto the ice with a sharp cry, sliding away. But more shadows leapt from the trees, their growls filling the frozen air. The alien mother screamed, clutching her child tight. Her bare feet slipped on the ice as she stumbled backward. The human shouted something, words she could not understand, but his voice was full of command. He moved like a wall between her and the wolves, his knife steady in his hand. The pack circled, their yellow eyes burning with hunger. The air was filled with snarls, the scrape of claws on ice, the low groan of cracking frost. Then the storm struck. Snow fell heavier, the wind roaring so loud it swallowed every sound. The ice cracked again, deep and sharp. One wolf lunged forward only for the ice beneath it to split open. A howl of terror echoed as the beast vanished into the freezing river. The others backed, away, cautious, their ears twitching, their hunger fighting against their fear. The human waved his arm, shouting. His voice cut through the storm like fire. The wolves growled, pacing, but then turned back toward the trees. Their shapes melted into the shadows, leaving only silence and the whistling wind. The mother's knees buckled, her body trembling. She had never been so close to death. Her child stirred weakly in her arms, his eyes opening for only a moment before closing again. She held him tighter, whispering soft words. The human rushed to her side, his hand steady on her arm. He spoke again, his voice calmer now, his eyes scanning her face. She didn't know his words, but she understood his meaning. You are safe now, but the storm had no mercy. Snow blinded their eyes, the wind burned their skin. The human pointed forward, urging her to move. She hesitated, her body weak. But when he tightened the strap carrying her son, she found her strength again. Together they crossed the rest of the frozen river, every step careful, every sound terrifying. The groan of the ice followed them until at last they reached the other side. The hills rose before them, white and endless. The human guided her toward the rocks, his steps sure despite the storm. Her body felt like stone, her breath heavy, her feet bleeding. But she followed, because turning back was not an option. Her child's life burned brighter than her pain. At last, through the curtain of snow, she saw it. A dark shape pressed into the hillside, almost hidden. The human pointed, quickening his pace. It was another cabin, older than the last, but larger, stronger. Wooden walls stood firm against the storm, smoke stains marking the chimney it was shelter. The human pushed the heavy door open with his shoulder, snow spilling in behind him. Inside was darkness and silence, but the air was still, warmer than the storm outside. The mother staggered in, her child limp in her arms. The human set down his pack, moving quickly to gather wood stacked near the wall. Soon sparks flew and fire roared to life, painting the cabin in warm light. The mother sank to the ground beside the fire, her child pressed against her chest. His lips parted slightly, his breathing weak but steady. She rocked him gently, whispering old songs in her tongue. Her tears fell freely now, landing on his blanket. But these were not only tears of fear, they were also tears of relief. The human watched from across the fire, his eyes tired but sharp. He pulled food from his pack, placing it beside her. He did not speak, but his actions spoke louder than words. Every move was careful, thoughtful. She studied him closely, her heart still caught between fear and gratitude. But with each passing moment, the balance shifted. Gratitude grew stronger. The fire warmed the cabin, chasing away the storm's roar. For the first time in many nights, the mother's body relaxed, her child stirred, his eyes opening slightly. "Mother," he whispered, his voice faint but alive. She pressed her lips to his forehead, whispering back, "I am here, my son." The human leaned back, his eyes closing for a moment. The flames flickered across his face, revealing exhaustion carved deep into his skin. He had risked everything to bring them here. And though she still did not understand why, she could no longer deny one truth. Without him, they would both be dead. The storm outside raged louder. Wolves howled again in the distance, carried on the wind. The mother shivered, her arms tightening around her son. The human's eyes opened at once, sharp and alert. He reached for his knife, staring at the door. For a long moment they listened, waiting. But the howls faded, swallowed by the storm. The mother exhaled shakily, her heart racing. She looked at the human across the fire, their eyes meeting. In his gaze she saw no malice, no cruelty, only strength, patience, and something she had almost forgotten. Hope. The child shifted again, his breathing steadier. He whispered one last word before sleep took him. Safe. The mother's tears fell once more, but this time she let them flow freely. She looked at the human, her lips trembling. She still could not speak his language, but in her eyes, her gratitude was clear. The storm roared outside. The world still cruel, but here inside this fragile cabin, they had found shelter, and for the first time in a long time the night no longer felt endless.